In this video, we're going to cover incident response, which is the last part of the cycle of the threat environment. So we have plan, and then protect, and then respond. So with respond, this is a critical piece because we cannot protect against everything, and so we need to know how to adequately respond to certain events that do occur. So in incident and disaster response, first we have those intrusions that are coming in. We can try our best to kind of preemptively protect against any of those things that are coming in to deter it. If that doesn't work, we can have some external prevention that would block some of those things, maybe those firewalls that we talked about at the border. Then we can have external deterrence. Then we have a barrier of prevention inside the network. This is where we want to make sure no one who's not an employee or shouldn't be granted access is not allowed. Inside, we're going to deter our employees by telling them about certain sanctions that occur in violation of certain events, etc. And there we want to make sure that we are checking and detecting anything that might occur. And then after that, we will respond. So the primary focus of this lecture is from detection to response and how to adequately respond to certain threats that have made it past all of our protections. So the question is, how likely is an incident to happen to you or to your organization? Let's see. Yeah, it's very high. All right, so what can we do? We need to have all the protections in place, but we need to count on something happening and have all the protections in place so that we can adequately protect against that. So there are varying levels of severity when incidents do occur. The first one is a false alarm. This is something that is flagged maybe by our software to indicate that something is a threat, but in reality it's not, and so it's just a false alarm. These are terrible for security personnel. They spend countless hours addressing false alarms only to find out that it wasn't something that needed to really be focused on. So the idea is to minimize the amount of false alarms that we receive. The second one is a minor incident. This is something that can quickly be addressed by maybe the security team, not something that we need to worry too much about. It's not going to cause destruction to our assets, etc. The major incident, though, is something that we need to be really concerned about. We're going to have a CSERT team, which we'll talk about in just a minute, that is organized to address major incidents, and it doesn't just include the security team. There are many steps that we have to go into in response to a major incident that occurs within our organization. Finally, something that we can't really plan on happening at our specific facility, maybe like a data center, is a natural disaster such as floods, hurricanes, tornadoes, fires, earthquakes, etc. Those can cause extreme amount of damage, and if we don't have procedures in place to properly restore or even redirect all of the traffic maybe to a second data center, then we're out of luck and we can't really respond to that incident. Each of these incidents need to be responded to quickly, so we need to have speed, and they need to have accuracy as well. So precision is hitting the same spot over and over and over again, but if we're hitting the wrong spot and attacking the wrong threats that exist out there, then we basically are leaving a lot of other threats open to attack our organization. So we need to be accurate and identify those threats that have the greatest likelihood of causing damage and then prioritize those first and then address those with speed and accuracy. We need to respond quickly to those incidents that have already occurred, and I prioritize the incidents that are the worst so that we can minimize damage, minimize the loss of our value and the impact it would have on our shareholders, etc. Additionally, every plan that we have to respond to a particular incident needs to be prepared much in advance. If we do not have adequate preparation, then an incident could occur and we would just be up with arms in the air, not understanding what to do or how to possibly address this particular issue. So we need to sit down with our team and think of all the possible security issues that might occur and think of what would we do if that situation did occur. After planning what our solution would be. Maybe it's to have UPSs, uninterrupted power supplies, to quickly power the servers in case of loss of power, and then have a generator kick on after that. That would be something in the planning process. However, in addition to just planning, we need to actually rehearse it. So when I was a data center intern, they had me go to the generators once a week at 5:30 in the morning just to check to make sure that they turned on. In other words, we were rehearsing the power to make sure that if an incident happened, we wouldn't lose power, we would still be fully functional and be able to operate and transact with our customers. So there is a specific process to follow for major incidents. The first is we need to have the software and the people trained to be able to adequately detect when incidents do occur. So, for example, if a security personnel is evaluating logs and notices an anomaly that's beyond what is expected, they may want to investigate that a little bit further. That would be detecting the anomaly. The software may be able to generate a lot of the logs to be able to provide this information, but sometimes human knowledge and human understanding of systems will give us more info into how to detect these incidents. Then we're going to analyze these incidents. This involves looking at all the different things that we have detected and determine the severity of the threat. Based on the severity of the threat, we're going to escalate it. We're going to determine what level of major incident it is. Is it extreme? Is it moderate? Is it minor? We need to have that level of prioritization so that we can understand where we should focus our efforts first. The next step is containment. So how do we properly address these major incidents? Well, that is where we come to containment. We need to either cut off access to the resource. Maybe we have to power it down because ransomware has overtaken the entire device altogether. Maybe we need to just cut it off from the network. Maybe we know the virus signature and we can contain it by running some antivirus software. After that is the next step of recovery. So we're going to look at all the damages that have occurred based on the incident. Hopefully there aren't any, but that's not always the case. And then we're going to recover all the damages. Maybe we need to restore from backup that we've already have. So if we don't have a backup, then we're already out of luck. So we're going to recover and get back to fully operational state. The next step is to issue an apology. Based on the data that's impacted, it could be customer records, employee records. We may need to provide identity theft protection, etc. We also have seen many instances of brands that have tried to hide under the radar and how that has impacted their brand name. Now, the sooner we can apologize and indicate exactly what we're doing to overcome the threat, we are going to better establish goodwill with our customers. Now, obviously, because the breach has occurred, we've lost some of that goodwill, but an apology is a much better way of addressing an issue rather than trying to hide it up and being caught later on for hiding it up. The next step is punishment. Now, outside of your organization, punishment is not that easy. Inside the organization, you may have all the tracking that is evaluating your employees, and you could potentially find out just by the logs, etc. And from this, you could fire the employee or send the police in to arrest the employee based on what level of incident that was caused. Outside the organization, IP addresses can be spoofed. You have many other issues that could happen where people are hiding their identity. So it's a lot less likely to capture these individuals. However, by reporting incidents to the FBI, they may be able to compile a bunch of sources of all these reports and determine that the incidents that are coming up all come from a similar IP address, and maybe they'll be able to contain the individual or the group of individuals that are acting against their organization. After the punishment, we're going to do a post-mortem evaluation of the whole entire scenario. How could we have addressed this better so that this incident wouldn't have happened in the first place? This post-mortem evaluation can help us understand more in-depth details so that we can be better prepared for the next incident. And then we should also have an organization of the computer security and incident response team. This team is composed of many individuals, not just the security team. We have those in HR, we have those in law, we have those in public relations. so that we can address all these issues. And they're going to be the ones that are going to be practicing and coming up with the best way to address these issues. All right, go ahead and pause this video and then go ahead and walk through each one of these questions. All right, welcome back. So there are many threats that you could have identified. Maybe we have an employee that has access to the data center and they want to sabotage the servers by unplugging all the connections that are existed there. So how would you detect these threats? First of all, you're going to have some kind of access control to the data center. You're going to want to look back at the logs and detect exactly what happened. Additionally, you could have video cameras that are examining and looking at the behavior of your employees to kind of determine what's happening. This is something that you may not be able to prevent from happening, but at least you can detect when it did happen. So what analysis could be done to confirm any incidents are real? Well, first of all is to check the server logs to notice if any servers are not working the way that they should be. And how could this guide your actions? Well, you would look back at the logs and see when someone accessed the data center, see who's in there, and what potentially could have caused the problem. So what circumstances would need to be escalated to a major incident? Well, anything that causes a lot of downtime, the inability to perform the operations or transact with your customers, etc. These are some ideas. What containment procedures would you need to consider? Well, you need to contain this individual, can make sure that no one else has access to the data center. What recovery procedures could you have? Well, that would be to put the wires back in. That may require that you recable because some of the wires may have been broken, so you may need to fix some of those ends. What is necessary to issue an apology to the public? Well, if records were actually stolen or lost or damaged in any way, then we probably need to report these to the public. And then punishment for a major incident in this case would be to have that employee arrested, locked down, fired, escorted out of the building, etc. So moving on to something that can help us with the process of identifying these incidents is what is called an intrusion detection system. An intrusion detection system works like this. So we have the external network right here, and then we have the border firewall. Inside we have more of the internal firewalls, etc. Then we have the switch that links all to our organization computers. Before we hit that firewall, we're going to have an external intrusion detection system, which is going to evaluate all the different traffic that is coming in. And then we also have an internal intrusion detection system that is going to do the same based on maybe traffic going out of the organization, etc. Based on certain patterns that are met, it will flag these. A lot of these are identified as false alarms, which we've mentioned. It's going to log these, and then we have a server that we're going to log into that is going to allow us to look at the log of all these different events that have occurred. Now, a lot of these could generate false alarms, so they've also come up with an intrusion prevention system which seeks to overcome the limitations of the intrusion detection system. It reduces the amount of false alarms and is a lot quicker than an intrusion detection system in that it focuses on preventing rather than detecting those events, so we don't have as many issues to look at. So let's look at intrusion detection systems continued. So some of the things that an intrusion detection system is going to do is event logging. So events that are time-stamped, it's going to create a table or a flat file of all the events that have occurred. It will sometimes aggregate these so you can kind of get a bigger picture of what exactly is happening there. It's going to do some automated analysis that's going to look at those signatures that have already been identified as threats versus looking at anomalies, maybe spike traffic, etc. And it's going to be able to detect that and give us notification of that as well. Some of the actions that it can take is generate those alarms that we mentioned, a log summary of reports based on the total number of alarms, the number of incidents that have been identified. And then we can also have manual log analysis where people can go in and look specifically at these logs and see more in detail. With management, we have the ability to configure, tune, update, so we can fine-tune all this with the management of an intrusion detection system. One of these intrusion detection systems is here at this link. It gives a video introduction. It's one that we'll actually be exploring further in one of our learning activities in this lecture. So this slide focuses on a network intrusion detection system, the log that is based on the entire network, maybe inside of an organization. Also, it looks at some of the host intrusion detection systems, certain things that are happening on a specific device, for instance. Take a minute and analyze this log and see what you may realize as a potential incident. Pause the video and then come back when you've spent some time on this. So a few issues that we can see here is that we have a failed login attempt for the Lee account, failed again, and then successful. This may be okay. I mean, it's not too infrequently that we type our password incorrectly a couple times, but it is logged just in case we see repeated attempts over and over again, and we need to address those. Additionally, here on the network, we're seeing a series of packets that are email related, and that might not be a problem, especially since is someone probably sending an email every 2, 6, or 4 minutes. We're likely to see that. Now, if we saw like thousands and thousands of emails all within a second, then we may have identified some kind of spam activity on our network and may need to address that. Right here, we're seeing some of the traffic that is coming from one internal IP address to another, and it's through the destination port 80, so indicating that this is web traffic. One thing that's interesting here is we see a reset flag, so basically that is someone killing the connection to the web traffic and then resetting it. Not necessarily issues, but these are some things that could come up and be flagged as part of our network intrusion detection system or host intrusion detection system. The next thing is the distributed intrusion detection system. The way this works is that first we have a network intrusion detection system that is going to have a firewall connected to it, and then it's going to have many host intrusion detection systems based on each individual device, and then we're going to have a manager. Now, the reason why we have this manager is rather than pushing out the intrusion detection system to all these different hosts, we just go to the manager and say, these are the new updates for the intrusion detection system, push it out, and it should send all these updates to the host so we can determine what we want to actually monitor. The vendor that manages the intrusion detection system is going to be able to connect and display the responses that we would expect. The manager, rather than having to connect directly to the firewall, is going to have some direct encrypted communication between the vendor as well as the host in order to be able to manage those updates. So here's an example of real traffic that could occur with an intrusion detection system. So here we see the exploit. So we have a malicious website, we have brute force authentication, we've mentioned this with our access control lecture. We have the severity of the threat as deemed by this software, that this is a high threat or a medium threat, where this attack is potentially originating from, what server it affects on our specific network. So we can just come here and quickly evaluate some of these issues. So what I want you to actually do is experiment with the AlienVault and do the following. So you're going to go to AlienVault just by clicking this link. If you see this message, just go ahead and click Advanced and then proceed to the demo.alienvault. This just means that they're not using HTTPS traffic, but they say they are. So what we're going to do is we're going to log into the server using the credentials from the slide. So we're going to use guest as the username and AlienVault as the password. So immediately here we see a dashboard. We can see tickets that can be created. We can analyze certain security events, look at all the alarms that have occurred, see existing tickets, look at potential vulnerabilities, traffic, the availability, generate reports, etc. So what I want you to do is pause this video and then address the questions that are listed here. Go ahead and pause the video and look around. So here we are at the dashboard. We can just click on this tickets tab and we can see all the different tickets that are currently open. We can click on the analysis and actually create our own ticket if we wanted to. So we could look at all these different tickets that have been logged, indicating what type of issue this might be. A Trojan, which could be a huge problem. Someone looks like they've created an assignment 8 ticket. So we're going to go ahead and create a ticket. So we can do an alarm or something and then create a ticket. and we could come in here and create our own. So this is a demo server that kind of just has a summary of events that have really been logged and captured. And it's reporting these, reconveying them so that we can have kind of a real exposure to what this might look like. So if we go to the analysis tab, specifically the alarms, we can see what the most common threats are. So we have system compromise. We can see when they occurred last recently. So this would be March 25th. We can see what was exploited, any other issues that might be occurred. This down here gives us a lot more details. You could see exactly what it was. So like a Trojan infection is rated as high, a malicious website, suspicious behavior. So we can immediately see all these different alarms that we're looking at. We can look in the group view to kind of group all these different exploits by category and get a little bit more information based on how many alarms those we're seeing for each one of those categories. We go back to the dashboard. We didn't spend too much time on here, but it kind of gives us a brief overview of the total number of tickets that are still open, the top events that are happening. So we got authentication as a huge event. We have down here multiple events across which servers that they're happening. So it seems like this server .78 is receiving the most attacks currently at the moment. With top 5 alarms, we have Pulse, malware, antivirus policy violation. So you can see that this could manage many of our issues that we are experiencing. We can look at the vulnerabilities in the environment, and it will show us the total serious vulnerabilities and how they rank based on each one of our servers. Again, this is in a demo environment. So we can just kind of walk through, look at all the different things that are offered by this software. This would be a great software to use for a company that is trying to get an overarching picture of what's happening, see the intrusion detection system and the threats that exist up there. This doesn't look very good because we have a bunch of our servers that are down. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about are honeypots. So honeypots are something that look appealing, but in reality, it's not what it pretends to be. So for example, Wile E. Coyote here, who is trying to catch the Roadrunner, thinks that there is a huge tunnel in this wall, but the Roadrunner simply painted something that looked like a road, and Wile E. Coyote runs right into the wall and is stumped. So honeypots are similar in that if something looks appealing, we want to go that direction, only to find out that it is not what we expect it to be, and we're trapped. Thinking of the Winnie the Pooh instance, who puts his head in a pot. There's an example. Why it's called a honeypot is that he puts his head in and he's trapped. So what organizations will do will purposely create these honeypots that look very attractive, that look like they have data from the organization, and they hope those that would be committing misuse against the organization would get sucked into these so that they can better evaluate their threats and see exactly what they need to protect against. So do this on your own, come back, and then let's discuss the differences that you noticed before and after starting Honeybot. So port query only works as long as you've navigated in the command prompt to the actual folder where you currently have port query. All right, well, welcome back. So here I am in command prompt. I'm going to hit CD and open up the folder where I have the port query tool, and then I'm going to go ahead and copy that command from the slides. But before I do that, I need to know my IP address. So I'm going to do IP config. It gives me my IP address as 192.168.0.10. So what I'm going to do is paste this from the slides, change this IP address portion to that IP address that I have up above. This is my personal home network. So I'm going to run this, and it's attempting to resolve each one of these ports. You notice that none of the ports are listening. It's just scanning, seeing which ports are open. So on a personal device, this makes sense because I wouldn't want to have any ports open. And so it's just going to run through all 80 ports. All right, so it ran through all 80 ports. As you can see, all of them are closed, meaning that nothing is listening. So if I were to run this on my server, though, we would see some of these ports open, specifically 80, because it allows web traffic. So what we're going to do now is open Honeybot. You notice here it has the adapter. I can select all. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my command prompt and run the same command that I ran before. So we have the same ports, as you can see here. Now if I run this, it starts saying listening, 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 and you start hearing that chirping noise indicating that all this is now being captured here. So regardless of the port, all the traffic is being redirected rather to its original source is now being redirected to Honeypot. And as you can see, it's already gone through all 80 ports. And in fact, if I go to my browser and search for something, let's do something like test, and it captures that traffic and we see that it has been pulled in here. The reason why you're seeing different ports here is because these are ethereal ports. So the ports that have been temporarily opened for me to communicate with the website that I'm transacting with. So what differences did we notice? Well, we noticed that the Honeypot acted as a way to capture all this traffic, make it look like there are plenty of holes within the organization to kind of get the hackers' attention so they could not capture what we wouldn't want them to. Finally, we're going to talk about business continuity planning. So we need to have a plan in place if something does happen, a natural disaster or a major incident that could potentially destroy us. So business continuity is all about keeping the firm operating or restoring the firm to operation. So it's about the entire organization. Whereas IT disaster response is all about just focusing on the IT resources. So we need to have a plan in place that can ensure not only that the IT is working, but that the whole business as itself can get up and running as soon as possible. So some of those steps that have been outlined by TechTarget is down at the bottom. We have some of the lower level tasks such as network storage and servers. This is mandatory to run organization, but it should kind of be mostly automated. Backup and offsite replication should be automated for the most part. We could then have an alternative site. For example, Creighton has one in Omaha and one in Lincoln. So if Omaha goes down, they can just adjust all their resources to the Lincoln data center so that we can be up and running. The recovery process, after you've initiated that recovery, you need to do some validation testing, make sure that everything would be brought back to the same standard that you had before this incident occurred. So you better have those plans, the way to manage those risks that exist, and then a higher level, you have business continuity and the policies that you're going to use to be able to ensure you're back up and running. So with IT disaster recovery, we have a few ways to approach this. First is to have a hot site. So for example, Google has multiple data centers located throughout the world, and they are actually running the exact same amount of content in all the data centers. It's exact duplication. So if one is completely destroyed, they just flip a switch and basically they're now running everything off of their duplicated data center. You also have what is called a warm site, where you have all the servers ready to go. All you need to do is just install the software or restore from backup so that you're up and running. And then what you may have is a cold site. A cold site means that you have the building all ready to go, but maybe none of the hardware is inside of there, so you can immediately get purchase what you need and plug it in and get it up and running. But it's going to be a lot slower process than, let's say, for example, the hot site. But again, it's going to be a lot more costly to do a hot site backup versus a cold site backup. And then finally, to wrap up this lecture, just walk through each one of these questions and think to yourself what you may have learned, what you'd like to investigate further, what's most surprising or difficult for you, and how this has enlightened your understanding about security.